perhaps if we'd restructured things with the agency, but if we also did not have the temerity to believe that Congress should go in and muscle the market and get down payments down to zero, if we hadn't had the temerity to pass the GSE Act and allow a government-sponsored enterprise to go into the business of arbitrage and over-leverage it to 100 to 1, what I'm sharing with you is that there are a number of factors.
Sure.
A number of factors, and some of it is because of congressional, intervention into the market, and also because Congress tied the hands of the regulators, and I'm talking now about the prudential regulators, the safety and soundness regulators, to actually go in and deleverage the portfolios, for example, for systemic risk with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I witnessed all of that. I think that there's an additional consideration here. And part of it, and we've talked about this, part of it is the idea that Washington can better understand what the consumer demands than the consumer. And I'll just give you one example. It was with overdraft protection. The presumption here is Americans don't want overdraft protection. They don't want to be paying for that. They're all going to have to opt in to get that. And what did we find when the government did that? We found they all opted in. I mean, overwhelmingly. Yes, people wanted that service, but the presumption here was that that was a waste of, So I just think the idea that those in government will dictate what products are allowed in the market and which are not, regardless of a willing buyer and seller, it is a consideration in all of this, as is the consideration of the fact that your agency is going to be able to act outside of the normal appropriations process. That's unique. That's new. I mean, the idea that that it won't be held accountable for the actions it takes in terms of a budget. But my main concern is an additional concern, and this I have shared with you. It comes from putting safety and soundness protection behind consumer protection in our regulatory structure. And as I said, we've tried that with the GSEs. We've tried that where we have this goal. Everybody has a right to own a home, right? And Congress interprets that right to mean, well, that if you don't have any down payment, you should have a right to own a home. Why aren't the down payments zero? If nobody will buy the subprime loan because you don't have any credit and you don't have a down payment, nobody will buy this junk called Countrywide, why not mandate with the goals through HUD that this has to happen? So we do that, and we set up bifurcated regulation where HUD is on your side of the equation here, the consumer protection. HUD is driving the goals, and on the other side, you had OFEO, a weak regulator, the prudential regulator, that was supposed to be regulating for safety and soundness. But guess what? They couldn't step in and deleverage the portfolios because the first consideration was not safety and soundness. We have set this up so that the first consideration is not safety and soundness. And having gone through this and watched this, this is my issue. We've tried bifurcated regulation. We've had the regulators, current and past, who had this particular responsibility, both tell us this helped create the collapse in the housing market and the wider systemic risk. Yes, it did. And had we had a single regulator, it would have been better. Okay? So all of us have heard this debate, and I just wanted your take on that, if I could ask.
Thank you, Congressman. I think this is a really important issue that you raise. The point about safety and soundness, I think, also goes to the point about dictating products. I want to be really clear about the vision of this agency. What we are about is making the price clear to consumers, making the risks clear to consumers, making it so that a family really has a chance to compare 2 or 3 credit cards or a couple mortgages to figure out 2 things. Can I really afford this thing? And secondly, have I gotten the one that's best? Have I gotten the cheapest one or the best service or the one with the new cool iPhone app? I think Congress was very cautious on your point when it set up the new consumer agency.
If I could interrupt you for just a second. I had an amendment that would make safety and soundness the first priority, that would have the prudential regulators sign off on that. And the majority opposed that amendment. So we weren't that cautious because the amendment wasn't accepted. So,
Although you do remember, Congressman, that the way it was ultimately set up is that the other banking regulators, the safety and soundness banking regulators, can overrule when they...
With a very high threshold as opposed to... I've given you the example of what really happened in the world. It's happened once. It could happen again, and it's likely to, I think.
And I think this is why the consumer agency was set up, so that its rules, whatever it promulgates, can be overruled by a combination of the safety and soundness regulators, something that exists literally nowhere in government. But you know, I should say, because I think this is important, for families to know the price, for families to know the risk.
We have no disagreement on that.
That's right. But I think
that
goes to safety and soundness, and I appreciate that, Congressman. I know we've had good conversations on that.
Thank you, Professor Warren.